Hello.
How you doing, Barry? I'm Michael. I'm run my own company, Phsychology, which is a dog training business, and I've recently started home boarding as well for dogs. Ex-police officer, ex-military, and obviously been invited here today to talk about my background and experience and bring that to you, and hopefully some people will get to learn from it, and some people will understand where I've come from as well, and some people will also understand the ongoing issues with the dog training and the dog industry in general.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for coming.
Alright.
Thanks for coming on the channel.
Right.
As I said, you know, everybody knows me. What I will do is I'll try very, very hard and thin down my accent. Michael's got an accent as well. Maybe not as thick as the Glaswegian, although we're only 10-minute drive for each other.
How about you stay in View Park, mate?
Yes, I know, you're just a coat bridge, anyway, that's another podcast. But listen, thank you very much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. It's probably, definitely the first time I sat down with a police officer and I've been asking the questions.
Ex-police officer.
Yeah, so it might not be just no comment this time, we'll get going, we'll get into things. Listen, it's very, very easy in my opinion, to learn your craft with the dogs and see this is what I know and this is what I do, and that's it. You will never ever learn anything new unless you speak to people that are in different situations. So if you want to call it profession, my interest, my hobby, my passion would be the gun dog situation. But that doesn't mean that I'm not interested in someone who can take an unbehaved pet and have that for an X amount of weeks and have it back very well trained, very polite, walking at heel. This is the reason how I contact people like Michael. We'll get Andy Fairweather on next for Honour's Gun Dogs. People that are just, got a different passion for me, but I'm very much interested in it, and the one common denominator would be the dogs, and this is why we're here today. So again, thanks Michael for making the time, the effort, the hassle, setting this up and coming to see us. So like every good story, we need to go back and start at the start.
Right back at the beginning.
Right back at the beginning. So if you don't mind, what was your first dog? And
my first own personal dog.
Yes, and what was your first experience in entering into the world of training a dog?
Well, I think what I will do is, rather than talk about my first dog, I'll go back to my first experience of dealing with dogs in a feral society. Because back in the day, when you're brought up in the tenement blocks in Glasgow, which is like a common close, you normally have about six houses as such.
So what we would normally call them as a high riser?
Well, no, not a high riser as such, but just a common close where you go through the front, you come through the back, and then you normally had about 6 premises within that block. And back in the day, getting brought up in Glasgow, you used to visit your grandparents at weekends, because back in the day your parents had to work all the time. Okay, so you generally found yourself at your grandparents' house or an aunt or an uncle's house at weekends, or when your parents worked. So I generally found myself either at my grandfather's house or my grandmother's house.
Don't mind me asking, whereabouts in Glasgow?
So the east end of Glasgow, Parkhead, or the west end of Glasgow, which was my grandfather's house, and just down the road from Ibrox Stadium.
And
so my grandmother.
How long have we been winding here?
Oh, how long what?
I don't know, when are we going back to here?
Well, we're going back to the early 70s.
So this is the different world for what I was brought.
Absolutely.
Although I'm 86, born 86, that's a different world. You go back to Parkhead at that time.
Oh, I was born in the 60s.
Most dogs you see at spring would be tied together, running about, feral.
So I mean, I was born in the 60s, so the later bit of the 60s. So when I was growing up, it was either in the east end of Glasgow or the west end of Glasgow at my grandfather's, and my mother's house was in the south side of Glasgow, which was in a very well-known estate called Castlemilk.
Oh, right.
Right, so
shout out to Jerry Cinnamon.
Normally referred to as Chateau de Lait Castle Milk.
Yep.
So that's the only words I know in French, right? So I generally went to my grandmother's house. So she stayed across the road from Parkhead, which is Selby Park. And my grandfather stayed in the Broomlin Road, which was across the road from Ibrox. So I had a mix of both worlds there. So I used to see these dogs running wild in the street, especially at my grandmother's, whereby, as I said, that was the first experience of watching feral dogs. And back in the day, what people used to do was just open their door and let their dog out for the day. And that's why you had all these puppies running about, because...
Treated them like cats?
Because the local mongrel from next door's local mongrel normally got together, had a bit of a wild time, and that's how you got what we always classed in back in the day as a scheme dog.
Heinz 47.
It was a scheme dog, as we call it, because back in the day, generally, the housing estates in Glasgow, sort of city areas, were called schemes, and that's what came the term scheme dogs, or scheme dogs, if you lived in Glasgow, because the local neighbour's dog got a hold of your dog, and lo and behold, a few months later or a few weeks later, out popped some pups. And they generally went free to anybody who would have them.
But a packet of fags, a pup.
Used to sit in the steps of my grandmother's tenement block, and I used to watch these dogs running up and down the street. And what always fascinated me was that there wasn't a lot of squabbles between the dogs. There was a very much pack mentality. You could see them roaming in packs, and they had little or no human interaction. And the kids, or the wains as we call them, used to run up and down the street with these dogs. And back in the day when cars weren't built the way they are now, you used to see these dogs chasing cars, because the movement, and as you know, movement creates drive. And that was my first experience of watching a dog being massively corrected by the wheel rim of a car, where it bounced off the side of the car. And do you know what? That dog never chased that car again, because it learned through that type, it learned that hurts if I chase that car. So like I said, I used to watch these dogs all the time when I was staying at my grandmother's and my grandfather's. And my grandfather was a great dog person, and I learned a lot from him. I always remember the stories about the German Shepherd that he taught to pick a saucer up off the kitchen unit and bring it to the living room, and then go back and get an egg. And that fascinated me, because we're talking about a German Shepherd here. Technically, a lot of people class them as power breeds, because the type of dogs and because the type of work they're involved in with protection work and stuff. And here was me, this German Shepherd sitting there with an egg in its mouth in front of my grandfather without cracking it. And the reward was the egg. So once the German Shepherd had held the egg in its mouth, he would crack the egg open, break it down the plate, and that's where his reward. So that was my first experience of positive reinforcement, technically. And then when I talk about the dog being corrected by the car, so there's a negative or a positive punishment there by that car. So that's when I first started that. But then we had the opportunity when I was younger. I think I was about...
Can I ask what age you were?
Oh, I was probably about 9 or 10 years old.
Just starting to see the world at that
just starting to see all these dogs running about. And you know what, I used to
just touch on something with that as well. You're right, but it was, I never took beer empty. We're not much wains, we're not much grown adults mauled to death.
No, absolutely
with
not.
These it's alright us calling them mongrels, but these dogs, these Heinz 47, never even had a jab in their life to protect them against rats and foxes and blah blah blah. But they weren't running about as protection dogs for young people getting into fights. They weren't killing young kids, killing adults. What's going on in the world now, it just shows you that things are bred to do a certain thing. But we'll maybe touch on that later. Just a wee bit.
I mean, well, 40...
Sorry to interrupt there, we'll go back to that. 40...
If I look back now, about 48 years ago, 49 years ago, it wasn't unusual for your grandparents to take up a rolled up newspaper to a dog's backside. That's what happened in that.
I'm laughing because my mum, to the day she died, would get the newspaper rolled up, and even if the dog put the two paws up, it could be a wee poodle. That's it.
Those were the days that, that's what dogs did. Dogs had their place in how dogs got fed the scraps for the dining table. Nowadays you're looking, there's all damn fangled foods and everything else, but back in the day, I understand what you're saying when you're saying that there wasn't all these child tax. I'm not going to lie, there was still people got bitten, and children got bitten to an extent, because they interacted too much when they shouldn't have, and they learn very quickly you shouldn't do that. But back in the day, when as soon as a dog laid teeth on a family member, that dog probably got beaten or got destroyed straight away. There was no question about it. You start laying teeth on a family member back in the day, that dog went to the vet and it was a needle.
Yeah, and there were no ifs, no buts.
No, and failing that, I've known people back in the day to take a dog up the back field of a farm and shoot it and put it in a hole. But that was the way the world was, and fortunately we've moved on a bit, since then. But there are still people out there that wouldn't think twice of taking a rolled up newspaper to a dog's arse.
Just stop you there, just a wee shout out to I'm sure if you've not read it, it's called it's the poem, You Must Do What Must Be Done.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ever get a chance, read that in the right frame of mind though. It's heartbreaking, but it's a great poem. And I'll just touch on that, just the way you say that, because you said, with these dogs back in the day, they were no stranger getting took up the back of a farm and shot. But you need to remember, folk with 20 odd dogs, and the poems goes as if it's a dog talking,
mm-hmm.
and it says, you must do what must be done,
mm-hmm.
take me to the place I love, blah blah blah. And the dog's struggling, but you take it to his favourite place and you put it out his misery, rather than the nervousness of going to the vets. I've seen dogs nearly taking heart attacks just getting lifted onto
mm-hmm.
the table. So I still think, in my personal opinion, depending on the person and the dog and the situation, that's a better way to go than taking the dog down to get it put down. But it depends on the type of breed, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to give a shout out to whoever wrote the poem. I don't know, but I would like you to read that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Really good read.
So you were asking about, my first own little dog, and I remember it was a wee mongrel, a wee dog that was one of a litter of a local mongrel that had been caught,
mm-hmm.
and these were neighbourhood friends. And I remember my mother paid £10 for that dog.
Full tenner.
At £10 back in the day, which was quite dear back then. Let's be honest.
What are we talking here, there, lady?
No, 70s.
Oh,
right. So £10.
Not getting many people getting a tenner. So you times that, you're probably talking about pop money now.
Yeah. So I mean, if you consider my spaniel cost me £1,000, okay, and my wee dog back in the day was £10.
It's not much difference.
If you think about the years as we move on, so always remember that wee dog. He was a cracking wee dog. He used to have epileptic fits and that and lie down, but back in the day we just held on so he didn't injure himself, and it wasn't this case of let's go down the vet and get lots of medication for him. Because back in the day, it was like a dog was having a fit, you just held on it to protect it, to injure itself. And I always remember that wee dog was a cracking wee dog, and I always remember my first days of training that dog. That's what always flicks me back. So my mother and father might have gone out for a wee night out, as they do, parents do, and I was left in the house, and I think I was about 13 at this time. And before any of the child people get in touch and say that's a bit naughty, right? 13-year-olds, that was nothing, back in the day. So I had this wee mongrel, and I set a broom pole up between two chairs, and I had bread, right? And I dipped it in oxo cube gravy and made it tasty. And I used to use that to get him to jump out of the wee broom pole.
Right.
And that was my first ever own personal experience, because I started to work out, if he wants this, he's got to jump over the broom pole. So that was my first experience of really, touch, and training, if you think about it.
Dipping your toe in the water here.
Let's see if I knew back then what bread did to dogs, I probably wouldn't have used it, because obviously it was full of carbohydrates and stuff as well, so it can soak it up a bit and maybe block a few bits and pieces inside the dog. But that was that wee mongrel. I used to feed him bread soaked in gravy that I maybe made up when the parents disappeared, and I shouldn't really be cooking and that, you know what I mean?
Back in the day, you're not going to get much better treats than that.
Right, so
except for on a Sunday.
Like I said, that was my first sort of delve into training my own wee dog, I suppose. And then I started really getting involved. I used to watch, and the people of a certain age group will remember this, on a Sunday afternoon, probably about tea time, after you finish your Sunday dinner, the famous Barbara Woodhouse would be on the TV. And you're probably too young to remember her, but
yeah, she's over my head anyway.
So Barbara Woodhouse was the first TV trainer that I ever watched back in the day, and she used choke chains and wee dogs, and it was always walkies and sits and that old firmness. And like I say, those of a certain age group will remember that, but that was family viewing back in the day. You know, there was no Caesar Milan, there was no, dogs behaving very badly, there was no, the Victoria Stilwells and all that on the TV with all this social media background. This was Barbara Woodhouse in her tartan skirt with a woolly jumper on, some elderly lady giving it large on the TV on a Sunday afternoon, and it was great family viewing back in the day. And that's what dog training was. Right, so that was a family event. And back in those days, you had three TV channels to watch: BBC One, BBC Two, and ITV. That was it. You know, Barbara was on at the weekend, and that was great viewing for the family after the Sunday dinner.
Put the seed back in your head.
Aye, that was the planting of the seeds really, until I really joined the military.
So we'll skip on here at least 7 years. What are you there?
I joined the military at the age of 16, believe it or not.
6 years, only 3 years on, that's very young.
So,
can I just stop you there? It just shows you you're probably a generation younger than my dad, right?
Aye.
My dad used to say to me, so my dad was for the goggles. 2 options.
Don't worry, it's not his fault.
2 options. My mum was for Drumchapel, right? So you got 2 options for there. Join the gang, or you join the military.
Well, the military was a gang technically, wasn't it?
But what my dad said with the military, the difference was they're flying you all around the continents of the world, they're getting you fit, and they're paying you.
I don't know about flying, Barry, but I used to wear size 8 leather personnel carriers, because that's what they were referred to, boots on the ground. Your leather personnel carriers were obviously your military boots, but I joined the military at 16. That was the avenue I wanted to follow.
Yeah, it's really young to go there though, you know.
I remember leaving school.
Literally not even, well, if you go back to the Glasgow days, 16 you're nearly, but every bit of man that you're going to be.
Well, I remember leaving school at the age of 16, and the following week I was on the train heading for the military. 16-year-old.
Brilliant. Can I just jump in again there? So, I know you went down the military and police route. So, if we rewind back to the day that you left, I'm pretty sure you never went there. It could have been a totally different story. Growing up in the places in Glasgow.
I'll be honest.
So you must have had friends there, that never went to the military and never went on to have a career in the police.
Yeah, when I look back, there are some people that I went to school who have made it, okay? And they were great, but there are other people, unfortunate, that became, I'm going to class it as victims of society at that time, okay? Because back in the day, drugs was a big thing in Glasgow and surrounding areas, so if people got involved in that type of thing, I almost look at addicts in a way as victims as well, because there'll be people who are dealing out there will probably give them that first hit for free, okay? But it's never for free because they go back.
Of course it's never.
Right, so
it's an investment for their part.
Yeah, so the way I look at it is that, there were people that I went to school with and I grew up in, because my parents took me away from the schemes in Glasgow to Cumbernauld when I was a wee slightly bit older, and I forgot to bring that in, but so I grew up in areas of Cumbernauld, and there are people there that I remember that I went to school with and ended up on the wrong side of the law.
Yeah.
Right?
What I was touching is there, just because I've ended up on the wrong side of the law, it's a thin line there at that young age of 16.
But the last time I was in View Park,
that young age of 16, it's a very important decision.
You come to an area of View Park, mate, and the last time I was in View Park, I think I was putting something in the back of a police motor.
Yeah, well, it was probably one of my cousins, so, could have been possibly me,
So, so like I said, the way I look at some people back in those days, the way I look at it is that they're almost like victims of society then, because, as I said, you mentioned it was also an investment for the drug dealer, okay? So yeah, by going to the military, I sort of missed out on that. Would I become still involved with criminality if I hadn't gone to the military? I don't think so, because my parents were quite strict.
Brilliant, good. Very level-headed 16-year-old.
Listen, if I stepped out of line, all my mother had to say was just mention it. My father would be home at a certain time of night, and that was enough.
But my father comes in.
Yeah, but my father, do you know what? He never laid a hand on me, ever. Never had to. never, just the threat of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's wrong with society now as well, is that there's no healthy fear of consequence.
See what you said there, just the threat of it. This is
Yeah.
what makes, in my opinion, a good trainer, a shit trainer, and a great trainer. If you can recognise when you can indicate to a dog with just a threat. Now you watch my body language here. Come on, blow a whistle, stop, you watch. Right, just that quick movement, the dog's over there, 20 yards out. I don't need to go pick that dog up behind the ears and pull it back to the spot. What I will do is I'll make sure that eye contact's still there for 20 yards out, and I will move my shoulder, I'll move my body. It's quick to that, and shout out to Ronan Gorman over in Northern Ireland. Kind of showed me how this worked. When the dog indicates that it recognises the threat of you coming, although you've done absolutely nothing, its arse is on the ground where it should have been. Deep breath, and you can carry on your training. Because, let's be honest, like you were saying there, mother and father, going out correcting a young boy and all that, it's no much different from running 40 yards. And who can be arsed to be, let's be honest, running 40 yards, dug back to spot, trying to keep up with the boys that are rabbiting with better trained dogs than you. It's all about recognising, when the threat is important. And what I mean by that is, the threat that you must have been a big young, let's say, you must have been a big young boy, well about yourself, just the threat of your dad coming home. Mentally, put that in your head, although he'd never laid a hand on you, and probably never would have, it still made you toe the line, and back up, shoulders back, head up, and through life, to where you are today. So I'm proud of you for saying that. A lot of people would have said, oh, this, that, and the next. Lollipop round about that.
I think that's what's wrong with society now in general, is there's no healthy fear of consequence. Back in the day, you never referred to your neighbours in their first name. You always referred to them as Mr. and Mrs.
Yeah.
And God forbid you'd ever address your neighbours with their first names, because your parents would say, is that right? You don't speak about them like that. I hear
that's a dying thing as well.
I hear so many children now even mentioning their parents in their first name. I don't get that.
I don't get that myself. I could never have.
So in regards to that, when you used to go into school, you sat there because there was a healthy fear of consequence that if you didn't, the teacher would let a leather strap out or whatever. And unfortunately, back in the day, there were teachers that obviously abused that right, and that's why it got removed, because there were some really nasty teachers as well that overdid it, like anything in discipline you do. And that, like I say, there's no healthy fear of consequence in the social society now, whereby that's why what I think personally we're getting so many problems. And I think that's very much the same in the dog training industry, where everything that's getting shoved down your throat by very large organisations that have loads of financial clout behind them is all about reward. Well, hold on a minute, you can't reward a bad behaviour. So again, there's no healthy fear of consequence in dog training. But off the subject there, so
this is what it's all about. See, the day it's a podcast.
Yeah.
We'll get into the dogs, Michael. We'll get into the training. I want to hear where you started from, how you came about. It's easy for everybody to sit back and say, oh well, he's for a well-bred family, he was for money. When he just started, he was already up there. No, I want to hear you are for the same area as me. Although we went different routes through it. Common denominators the dogs. And listen, when you start to play with dogs, as soon as you put a dog in the lead, two are on the exact same level. And it's all about how you understand the dogs, how you can speak to people, how you can train people to train the dog. That's the hardest bit in my opinion, training somebody to train a dog, rather than just taking a dog off, giving it back trained. But no, so don't worry, about getting on too much about where he started from. To me, that's more important.
But it's funny you should bring that the point up about.
With me, I'm just going to check something. Reset.
So it's funny you should bring the point up about about the that this person might have came to a pedestal, man. I'll be honest, both my parents had to go and work round the clock to provide for us. You know, my mother was a seamstress back in the day, and she actually made me my own trousers for going to school on a sewing machine.
Good.
Do you know what I mean? So I never came from, you know, wealthy backgrounds. Both my parents worked round the clock. I remember, you know,
my mum was in Alexander Overall. It's funny you've mentioned that.
My parents,
that was their trade.
My parents were like, you know, shifts in the night. My father would work triple shifts, and my mother would be out doing extra work in bars and that to bring money into the household, put food on the table. So there was no great wealthiness in the family, but what we did have in the family was respect for what your parents done. So
that's something you can't buy.
Right, so, you know, going back, so I joined the military at 16, and I originally joined what was known as the Royal Corps of Transport back then, because you couldn't go
that again, sorry, the Royal Corps?
Royal Corps of Transport, because you couldn't directly go and start working with dogs straight away back then, okay, way back in the early 80s. So what happened was, that was the route I went, because I was always fascinated by driving as well. Okay, so that gave me an opportunity to get on my driving licence and stuff like that as well. So lo and behold, moving on a couple of years after that, when you've gone through your trade training, you get posted to Germany, and I went to my first unit there, and there was a whole lot of guys that I met, cracking guys, and still in touch with them to this day, because we hold, you know, when people talk about guys joining the military, you do become brothers from another parent or another mum, right?
Yeah, brothers from another mother.
You know, and I'm still in touch with a lot of those guys as well, and I'm part of an association in Glasgow where we meet up once a month and you know, make sure we're all right and stuff like that, and part of a veterans breakfast group as well, where we meet up once a month as well for breakfast, you know, because there's a strong camaraderie there for friendship for ongoing years, and it's not unusual for me to attend other...
How long's that been on for then, Michael?
Well, I'm 57 now, Barry.
Right, and you go there once a month, every month?
Yeah, you know.
Well done, mate.
So,
because I know in here, just, you know, personal friends that might watch this, unfortunately,
you know,
they went into the other route in the military, come back out, can't handle it, and now they're not here.
Listen, that's why we
have
these meetings.
Because I've just, you know, I just think that's, you know...
That's why we have these meetings.
Yeah, brilliant, because it's easy for you to turn your back on that, you know, I'll concentrate on what I'm doing, so, nah, well done, you know, I've got to take my hat off to people that, you know, do that. Maybe you've no reason, maybe you've settled in with a wife, maybe you're going in the right path, no reason to look back, brilliant, you know, you're no better than anybody else you're with. Some of the guys, they might fucking need you to come every month, you know. No, so, you know, I appreciate you mentioning that, you know, and anybody that needs help, and anybody that's struggling, and anybody that's, you know, in a bad place, have a look about, you know, contact Michael, maybe not myself, can contact me, but, you know, there's things out there that will help you with your mental health, and I'm sure we might get into a wee bit of that later on, but I'm rewinding back, now you've been posted to Germany, and we're going to get into your dog handling.
Right, so I arrived in my first squadron in Germany. I was there for about 3 years, 3.5 years, whatever, and that was an engineer support unit where you supported engineers and with like, you know, all types of different equipment. I won't go into it too much. Following on from that, I get posted to a tank transporter squadron, which was predominantly heavy haulage for big armoured vehicles, like your big propelled guns, your big armoured tanks, etc. But the great thing about being posted to that unit in Sennelager in Germany was that the dog kennels were right next door. The dog training school was right next door.
Right.
So
when you've went there, that's in the back of your head then?
I can now see these kennels every day, and I can hear the bloody dogs barking at night for the kennels, because you've got to imagine there was like, you know, 60, 70 dogs in this area, and it was at the back of the camp, Antwerp barracks we were in Germany. So lo and behold, the Normandy camp, as it was called then.
Believe it or not, I've been there. At Bobby's Land.
So
the fun fair, isn't it? Far away there.
So Normandy camp was the big camp, and there was loads of different units in there. Like you had the PT Corps, the Tank Transporter Squadron, you had the field ambulance guys, the medical corps, and then at the back you had the dogs, right? So I used to see these guys walking past our camp every day towards their naffy break. Now naffy break was where other units all go together, and you all went in naffy, and you had your mug of tea, and you had your pie or whatever. It was your half, you know, your morning break, your afternoon break.
So what you'd say there is, you know, that's what everybody else would call your canteen.
Right, so, used to see these guys walking past and they had these rope leads over their neck, right? You know, from the shoulder down to the waist, and they had the big leather muzzles. They all carried leather muzzles with them because you're dealing with what is military dogs, right?
Yeah.
Which could be quite nasty fuckers, I'll be honest.
What would you say was most of the military dogs there? Is it just your German Shepherds predominantly?
Well, back in the day, we had it was predominantly German Shepherds, right? And obviously your explosive detection dogs tended to be Labs or Spaniels.
Right.
So I used to see these guys every day walking past, and I used to think, fuck me, that's cool. That's really cool, right? I used to see these guys, and I thought, right, that's it. That's where I want to go. That's what I want to do. So, you know, I'd learned so much. My grandfather was an ex-RAF man as well, and the dogs and everything else. So everything was sort of, I want to be that person. I want to be one of those guys walking past with a leading muzzle. And that might not seem a lot to somebody, right? But for me, that was it. I wanted to walk one of the big German Shepherds. I wanted to do that job, and that was really it. So
what age are you at now, Michael?
Must be in my 20s,
right.
You know. So back in the day, it was sort of unheard for somebody like myself to go to your admin officer who was like a major at the time, right, or a captain, to say, right, I want to transfer to the dogs. I want a dog course.
Yeah. Don't know if you're a handshake or a slap in the head.
No. So my trade was to transport things, right, logistics and because that's what they are now, logistics. So I had all these trades where I was driving these big trucks and everything else, like, you know, long articulated vehicles with armour, and obviously the military had gone to some expense to train me to do this.
Yeah.
It's a specialist role. You know, it's not a case of just throwing something on the back of a truck and away you go, and you've got to learn how to winch it on if it needs pulled out a hole or something else.
Yeah,
so me going and saying, right, I want to do that.
And there's a trade to absolutely everything.
Right, so he's
that's
like,
why it's called the military, you know.
So he said, no, you're not going. I said, but I want to go. He said, no, you're not going, you're a driver. And I'm like, but I want to do that. Right? So I badgered him for a whole month, didn't stop requesting. And in the end he said, right, you can go, but if you do any good, you're no leaving. Right? And I said, well, that's a bit unfair. So I thought, well, I'll get the first hurdle out of the way. At least I'll get to go.
Yeah.
Right? And I was I was a very fortunate guy because their camp was like 500 metres away from ours. So I could still stay in my own accommodation. Anybody else that came from an outside unit had to stay in the Normandy camp accommodation, which was nearly a mile away. But I could walk to mine, 500 metres away, right? So I was able to sit down and do a lot of studying and reading. And I'll be honest, Barry, I'm dyslexic, right? And I'm as thick as shit, right? So reading books has never been great for me. Practical stuff, putting hands on, that's magic for me. But you know, I'm not saying I can't even write. It was almost like it wasn't as good as what it should have been, if that makes sense. I would lose my concentration very quickly, and it wasn't till later on in life that I found out I was a bit dyslexic. And then that took me back to school days, because I used to get put in the corridor at school, right? Because I was a disruptive influence in the classroom, and here I am joining the military, and then a few years later joining the police, and I was a disruptive influence in class because I wouldn't shut my mouth and I was always talking, and so my schooling wasn't great, right? But back to the military, so I landed in the dog school, and I think there was about 20 of us there, and I remember, and I was sat up the back. Now what the army used to do is they get you to stand up, and they'd obviously pair you off with a dog. I thought, right, so it was like he would stand up and I stood up, and I'm not a small guy. I mean, back in the day I was probably about 6'1" with my heels on, right? So
fucking over 6 foot in there.
Right, so I stood up, and I remember the instructor saying, alright, Shane, 2 Bravo 98. I always remember the dog's ear tattoo, because back in the day the army tattooed the dog's ears. So I remember him, 2 Bravo 98.
Still famous Fletcher guys, they'll tattoo.
You never forget any military numbers. So 2 Bravo 98 was his ear number. My first military working dog, right?
2 Bravo 98.
Right, so I remember standing up and he said, right, that's it, you've got that dog. So
and
one of the first...
What kind of dog was that?
Oh, we hear this, right? So
You can't just go to that dog, you know.
So-
we want to know what kind, what age.
So,
you know.
listen, there's pictures on my social media of me pictured with this dog. He's just a monster of a dog, right?
And how do we find your social media?
So if you go into canine psychology, canine trainer and scent detection, then you'll see a picture on there of me with this dog, right? And it's got a poppy badge and all that way as well, because I'm very much into, you know, my military stuff. So I remember one of the first things you have to do when you're introduced to your dog is go and feed it. And you had these big aluminium food bowls, right? And back in the day it was like chum, right? Dog meat. That was it, basic dog meat and a bit of biscuit thrown in.
For what?
Right, and basically the way they used to teach you was you undid the both ends of the tin with the tin opener, and then what you did was you took one slice off, and then what you did with the tin is you just pushed the base all the way through so it landed there, and then you used the tin to chop it up. So you've already got a sharp tool, right? So improvise, adapt, overcome.
Yes.
Good military saying. So it was a tin used in your mix.
That there, how are you saying that there?
Improvise, adapt and overcome. So you had a tin and you used that to chop it up instead of getting a knife or a fork out. You mixed it all in and you just stirred it and it all got caught up and you then give it out, right? So I remember picking up, because every dog had its own bowl. So I picked this aluminium bowl up and I don't think there was one bit yet straight. There was a tooth mark in every section of this bowl and it was steel. We were talking about aluminium here, right? And I'm getting handed this bowl and it's got dents in it, it's got teeth marks in it, and I'm thinking, what the fuck am I going to feed here? A dinosaur? A crocodile? I'm like, Jesus Christ. So
you're not starting with the best dog, Megan.
So you go into the kennel area, which is through a gate, through another gate, and then you walk around, you've got all these kennels, big stand-up kennels, you can walk through them, and there's big bedboards at the back. So your dog's down there and he was right, but I walk all the way around, and I walk around and I've got this thing staring at me, and I've got the food in my hand. I'm thinking,
when you go to this thing, what kind of
so
dog are we talking?
you've got this long-haired German Shepherd, and it had
straight back.
Everything straight back, not a bend in it, and he had the head the size of a basketball, and I'm thinking, fucking hell.
Jet black nose,
so
brown eyes.
I can almost feel the old starfish in the backside starting to twinge, thinking I've got to go in there and feed this monster.
That's for this job.
So I'm thinking, do you know what? It can't be that bad. You know, they're not going to let me die. Come on, maybe aye. So I've got the bowl and I open the kennel door, and as I open the kennel, I just remember my grandfather saying one day, son, the best thing you can do is don't shout or scream at an animal, just be nice and calm and be relaxed, and the dog will pick that up, right? My grandfather I always remember him saying that. So I thought, right, rewind the brain back here, right, I remember what he said. I was calm about it. I opened the kennel, and the gate as such moves backwards, so I've now got a barrier anyway, right? So
this
came to
your first interaction.
I've got the food here.
We have dream job dog.
And as I've moved the door, the dog just backed off. I put the food down, he looked at me, I shut the door, and then he went into the food. I thought, that's great, magic. Cleared the first hurdle. But when the instructor came, he said, you've got to go and get the food bowl back now, once the dog's eaten it. So, and this, I want to cover that as well, because this cracks me up. I always see these videos about people putting their hands in dogs' food bowls and that. See, for me, that's absolute shite, right? If I put food down to a dog, I should allow that dog to eat it undisturbed. I'm telling you now, Barry, if me and you were in a restaurant and you went to touch my steak, I'd fucking stab you with a fork, right? I'd be so scared my steak. So it cracks me up when I see people thinking, I'm going to put my hand in a dog's food bowl. I'm like, are you mental? You know what I mean? So
quick break there, sorry guys.
I've gone in and fed this monster of a dog, and then part of the training is that is dog husbandry as such. So you're responsible for the care and well-being of that dog. You're responsible for the grooming, everything else. You're responsible for going and cleaning all the kennel every morning when you arrive for work. You're making sure that the dog board or the kennel board at the back of the kennel, because there's a big walk-in kennel, and at the back there's a closed-off area. It's got a bigger door where you can go in and lift the bedboard out, hose it down, clean it all down, put the straw in place, and then the newspaper underneath that, because that's what military dogs slept on, you know. And then there's a bit for them to go in and out. There's a hatch that they can go in and out through the night. Obviously, if there's any toilets to be done. So when you come into work in the morning, for a military dogs, it's a case of you go to the kennel, you're feeding the dog, you're cleaning all the kennel out, stuff like that. So the dogs normally go in what they call a chain point, where you're cleaning the kennels out, so all the other dogs are within range, and they're nearly touching nose to nose. And luckily, because you got a lot of angry dogs out there as well that can take a dislike to one of the other dogs, so they're on chain points. Now, part of that husbandry is your grooming, and one of the things they teach you to do is always muzzle the dog when you're grooming it. And the reason behind that is that it creates positive interaction. So the dog appreciates that every time muzzle goes on, they're getting this massage, you're getting this grooming. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So that whenever you go to a military vet, the dog has to get muzzled. So see how you're creating this positive association with muzzle already through grooming and massage and everything else, so that when you take the dog to the vet, the dog gets a muzzling. Because let's be honest, the dog's got...
that touches on one of your latest videos, crate training. Seen, you know, so a lot of people never put their dog in a crate.
Aye.
But what happens when they go to the vet?
Aye.
So it's calming the dog down for different situations.
Aye. So
and it's life at well-being.
Aye. So when you look at that, it's if you think about it from a situation from that perspective, you're creating this positive association with a muzzle, because lo and behold, when you take a dog to the vet, there's a chance that it's going to get a needle in its backside or a needle in the back of its neck, which, you know, let's be honest, can be a bit uncomfortable for a dog.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if you get this big hairy mutt, a military dog that's trained to bite people, well, what's to stop it turning around and nipping the vet?
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we always used to muzzle them when we were grooming them, to create this positive association. So in earnest, you're creating this positivity for the dog to learn. So again, that's positive reinforcement in a nutshell.
Yep.
You know, so that you're creating this positivity.
Similar things, you know, with people that are trained with using, although I don't use them, I've never used one, I see a similarity, if I think about it, with the e-collar and introduction to the e-collar, where, you know, they maybe give an electric shock, but a vibration, and then a reward, and slowly but surely, you know, the dog will start to associate, you know, one way or the other. So, no, it's you know, maybe I'm looking a wee bit further down than most viewers will now, but I can see the, you know, the reason behind, and the, you know, the thinking behind that.
So like I said, you're up there for the dog training school for a considerable amount of time, and you have all these different tests you have to complete, and it's about the anatomy of the dog as well. You have to look at, you know, the things that make up the dog and how the dog thinks, and all these things thrown in, and it can be quite intense at some stages. And then you've got the bite training to go with that as well. So you've got all that to put in place in the protection training, because ultimately what you're getting is a ward dog, where ultimately it'll be used for protection work later on. And it wasn't until later on that I went into the sort of explosives detection type stuff later on in Belfast and places like that. So lo and behold, you're doing the course, and like I said, I had this great ability where I could sit and I could analyse things and think things over, and I sort of went back to my accommodation every night, and I just dealt with the dog stuff because I was really interested in it, you know.
And it's at that young time, you know, where you just, you know, although it's an interest now turning into a passion, could you see yourself now starting to get leaps and bounds ahead of the others that were doing it as a job? You know, that's in my opinion, that's the difference. Anybody can say they're a dog trainer, right? And learn the basics of this day. You know, I want to know the guy that is thinking behind the dog, you know, the psychology, if you want to see it. Why is the dog going to react like that, do that? How can we go 2 steps back to go 4 forward? You know, so at that time you're looking along the line and saying, well, these guys are doing this as a job, you know. In my opinion, I'm getting him studying this every night, figuring out what's wrong with my dog. Normally the dog that I've got, the one next to me, probably 2 dogs down the line, and then you'll probably end up finding yourself giving your comrades or colleagues tips and trying to pull them through. So at that time you're starting to see yourself how would you put it, without being big-headed, but you know, getting well ahead of your peers, your colleagues.
Well, you know, there was always in the military. There's always been a great drinking culture, massive drinking culture.
Drinking.
Aye, alcohol, and smoking and alcohol and everything else. And I mean, I wasn't any different. I mean, I liked to drink, and I could get, you know, as drunk as the rest of them. But when I was doing the dog stuff, I didn't really go down that route. I was always more involved in it. And some of the other guys would go by and they would just go out and get, you know, a few drinks down their neck at night with the studying side of life.
Yeah.
But because it was becoming a real passion. Now, you know, you mentioned something there earlier about you could see yourself maybe slightly better. I always remember a comment somebody made to me a few years ago, and I remember that as my grandfather. You know, I always looked at him as a dog person, a great dog person. And I remember somebody saying, your grandfather said he was good, but you're better.
Is that right?
And
not stick with you for a while, eh?
You know what I mean?
Heart up, you know, up in the back of the throat kind of stuff.
My grandfather, I respected him a lot. Very proud man, etc. And worked very hard all his life, and you know, that always used to sit and listen to him for hours talking and giving me knowledge and all this kind of stuff. There's looked up to him in a way which was quite difficult because he was only 5'8" and I'm 6'1", you know what I mean? So
it doesn't matter what your size is, you know, the size of the heart.
But you know, that touched a chord with me when somebody said that your grandfather said he was good but you're better.
Yeah. You seem to resort back to your grandfather quite a lot there, Michael. To be fair to say, you know, you were very, very close, you know, to him. Is that one of your heroes in life?
Oh aye, definitely.
Must have been hard when he left.
You know what? When I often think about him, it's aye, definitely.
It's one of the things that life will never ever prepare you for.
Nothing, you know.
And don't mind me asking, sorry to cut you off, you don't mind me asking, when you did go, you know, how did your mental health cope with that, you know? Do you think dogs ever helped you? Because I'm trying to relate the dogs with your
dogs definitely help, you know, when...
And you need to remember, everybody watching here, you know...
You know, when I remember when he went, listen, I was a broken man.
Is that right? What age were you, Michael?
That's probably, when he passed away, I was probably, you know, probably early 30s at the time.
Young, you know?
Yeah, you know, but because of who he was and what he brought to me and what he gave me, belief-wise, you know, he always gave me a belief that I could do things. So, you know, I remember when I was growing up as well, like I said, I used to travel on the bus as a young kid. You know, I mean, we're talking as a young child going onto a bus, you know, a local bus, and travelling the length of Glasgow to go and stay with my granddad and stuff like that, you know. And he was a proud man. He used to walk miles and miles, and you know, you'd listen to him, and he was very knowledgeable, and because he'd seen life,
yeah,
you know, he'd been there. So like I say, when he passed away, I'm not going to lie, but I was a broken man.
Yeah, you can. I think, you know, anybody listening, you know, would have picked up on that as well. You know, you can kind of hear, you know, although we can't see, you can hear the bond.
Yeah,
you know, you know, maybe about 8 times you referred back to him, so you can feel it. You know, I can feel it.
Listen, you know, I'm not going to deny the fact that, like I say, I was a broken man when I went. So always, you know, think of him sometimes when I'm dealing with dogs and some of the things he used to say to me.
And this is you well in with the dogs now, starting to understand the psychology and the training.
And I remember one of the instructors saying to me, he said, that dog's never worked for another handler as well as it's worked for you. And he said, what are you doing? So see, at night, about 5 o'clock at night, everybody, yeah, that was you finishing work for the night, and you would go back to your accommodation, or you would go, and I never went back. I went to the kennel. And this may seem strange, right? But I used to go back to the kennel. I used to sit in that dog's bedboard with him, just chewing the fat, talking rubbish, right?
Good thing about the dogs is, and I do it often, sit with a dog at a river, and it's therapy in a way.
I used to sit and just stroke him, and that dog rested his chin on me. We were talking about this. Remember this big German Shepherd I seen looking through the cage at me? And that may seem strange at the time, but I was starting to build a bond and a relationship with this dog.
So you'd start to say you're starting to become best mates with the dog?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I used to talk rubbish to this dog, and the dog's probably sitting there going, what the hell are you talking about? You know?
You need to remember, folk are watching this. Folk do the same, whether it be any breed that's sitting on an arm of your couch, whether it be a husky at your side, whether it be a cocker spaniel who looks you dead in the eye, that sits there looking you dead in the eye, you know, it's one of the ways of getting things off your chest, you know, and I would highly recommend it to anybody.
So like I say, I mean, I used to sit and talk absolute nonsense to this dog, right? But see, at the end of it, the dog started working for me. There was almost like a sense of I'm beside you and I'm beside you as well, and we're working as a team here. And as a team, it just came off. It really did. I couldn't believe it.
Did you have a name for the dog?
Did I have a name for it?
Yeah.
The dog's name is Shane.
Shane.
Right, so 2 Bravo 98, that's its ear number, never forget it. First, you know, like I say, you never forget a military number if you've been in the military. And like I said, you know, we built up such a strong bond and relationship working away. So lo and behold, the course is now coming to an end.
How long did the course last?
Well over a good month or 2, you know.
So you're about 8 weeks in, 10 weeks in,
but you know,
you're already starting to connect with the dog.
So I was connecting with this dog at week 2 anyway, you know, because I was getting really into it, and it was a passion to work with dogs and stuff. So there I am, you know, your final day, and you get taken back to the classroom. And this is when you're told if you made the grade or not.
Right.
So generally what
Pats in the mouth here.
Oh, you know, because if I'd failed, failure wasn't an option for me. You know, if I'd have failed, I'd have come back and done it again, no matter how many times it took. And I think you were only allowed a couple of attempts at it. So, you know, off the top of my head, I can't really remember, but that to one side, it was like, you know, here I am sat in this classroom, there's, you know, 19 other blokes. We all really wanted to do well, and they start reading the marks out, and my name wasn't getting mentioned. My name wasn't getting mentioned to the end. Right, and
sounds like a competition with the dogs. They start off in reverse order, and they go certificate of merit, X amount, and nobody wants to hear their dog in a certificate of merit, and then they go to third, second, and you're like, if I won this, and you get fuck off.
So it's like they're going through all the names, and my name hadn't been called, and I was the last one. And I remember the instructor said, "Emans, 98% top student."
Top of the class. Well done, mate.
I was like, what? He said, top student, you are the top handler here. And I was like, all that work I put in, all that effort, all that time sitting talking nonsense to that dog, all that listening to my grandfather, everything started, the jigsaw started getting put together, right? The blocks were getting put in place.
Did you start to realise there that dogs are your life?
So I've now got to get back to my original squadron, which was transport.
Oh, you're not allowed to go.
And tell them
you're top of the class.
that I'm now the top student. I've now got the top handler space, and lo and behold, I believe in.
I forgot about that.
So goes back and got my course report and all that. Comes through about a week later, but I go back, and then you have to go in and say that's me back, etc. And you say, how do you go on? As well, I've got some really bad news. Because I was quite I've always been renowned for a guy with a bit of a sense of humour as well, and a bit joking. And my wife will tell you that as well.
Testify that.
So I like to joke about things, but serious on another note. So I said, bad news, I got top student. What do you mean top student? What does that mean? It means I'm getting posted with the dogs. Because they've invested that time and effort and money into you, then obviously they want to recoup that in some way, which means you're going to go and work with dogs, right? Yeah. So I remember him saying, well, you're not leaving. I said, well, unfortunately you didn't have an option because somebody's going to be arguing, right? He said, it was a bit of a laugh and a joke, and he said, all right mate, well done, I know that's your passion, I know that's what you want to do. So, you know, that was the case, and then that was it. I went to start walking ducks, and
Right, where was your first post?
I got posted to Northern Ireland. So, and my first job was protection dogs.
So go back to the year.
So you're back in the 80s again.
Good, so right, so we're starting to, the story's starting to take a bit of shape now.
So start working with protection.
Top of the class, rather than going one way, you found your passion, whether it be the universe finding you and putting you in that situation.
So,
but you're now back posted to Northern Ireland. And you're a dog handler, that's your title.
So back in the day, nowadays what you've got is you've got like one army dog unit, I think it's called now. But back in the day, it was all different cat badges that came together to form dog handlers.
What's a cat badge?
So, for argument's sake, I joined transport, so I would have a transport cat badge on, or the girls would have that, or different regiments have their own identity.
Okay.
So you would have your own identity, and then you would get to go and be a dog handler. So you kept that identity as such, but you were part of the dog handling scenario. So it's a change place nowadays where you become part of the army dog unit. Okay. So from what I believe, and I'm sure there'll be somebody out there who will say, well, no, it's slightly different. I don't know the modern way it works, and certainly since the days of Afghan and the Gulf, it's a completely different culture to what I was.
Mm-hmm.
So,
so
back
you're here now, and this is you
in the 80s.
In your early 30s?
Oh no, this would be still in my 20s
and
80s, right? So, here I am walking around this camp with this big German Shepherd on with the combats on and a big pair of whalers because it's muddy and crap.
Can I ask, is this Shane?
No, this was a different dog. This was a dog called Sebastian, right? Who was an absolute bigger, more aggressive animal.
Okay.
So, back in the day, the army used to get a lot of dogs handed into them rather than raise their own puppies. They do raise their own litters now. For they have breeding programs where they bring dogs on, but back in the day, a lot of the army's dogs were donated dogs, dogs that were in family homes that were a bit too heavy to handle.
Mm-hmm.
So generally the army got the really aggressive bad ones, and the RAF always got the good ones because they were the display dogs as such. But it was always a laugh and a joke back then that the army got the worst dogs, but they were actually turned out the better dogs for protection work. So here you are in camps in Belfast and that, and I've got this German Shepherd called Sebastian, and Sebastian was a bit of a bad lad.
Yeah, it's a nice name, Sebastian.
When he got a hold of something, he never let go.
Is that right?
Oh, you had to choke him off. He an absolute animal.
What do you mean by choke him off?
So obviously you had to put some tension on the collar to obviously cut circulation off to let go, because when a dog's full of adrenaline and in the real world, because I know you see these sport dogs.
So you've got Sebastian here that's basically a lockjaw dog.
So remember that when you're working dogs in the sport world,
mm-hmm.
you're working in a controlled environment, you're working to a sequence, you're working to a drill. So your IPO dogs and that, and you see people right out in the dog outs. In the real world, when it's full of adrenaline and full of fighting and everything else, remember you're asking a human being to stand still so that the dog will release. I don't know about your brain, Barry, but when I've got a German Shepherd hanging on the end of my arm, ripping and tearing me, the last thing I'm going to do is stop squealing and stand still. When you've got somebody shouting and screaming, stand still, the dog will release, and you're like, aye, okay mate, I've got this very large monster on the end of my arm with 42 teeth crushing and tearing my flesh and crushing my bone, and you're expecting me to stand still when my brain's now instinctively telling me to survive.
While you're doing this, but in the back of your head, are you seeing this as a problem with yourself?
No, because you're in a highly adrenalised...
No, I mean, if you're wanting the dog to release and you're figuring out that you've just told me no humans want to stop, are you figuring out, this is a training problem I can maybe fix, show them, or at the time you just...
No, at the time. No, because
just something that
you're
you've
dealing with a situation.
Because I know now where, release means release.
Aye.
And if they're not, then the dog's no longer
there. Nowadays you've got, when you release a dog nowadays, it has to be lawful in the first place.
Yeah.
Because you're using a use of force. It has to be proportionate to deal with what you're dealing with, do you know what I mean, or stuff like that. So back in the day, in the 80s, if a dog bit somebody that, let's be say, shouldn't be where they should have been,
yeah,
or they were being a bit naughty,
yeah,
it wasn't a great problem if your German Shepherd was ragging somebody up and down.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So
it's not the first time you've seen a human getting bit with a dog.
No. If you don't want bitten with a military dog or a police dog, don't be naughty.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way around it, right? I know it's easy to say, but
but what I'm getting there at, because I'm trying to, in my mind, fast forward as well, just for anybody coming to you for training. If a dog bites a human, there's no panic coming up in your system. You've been there, you've seen it, you've done it, you know the ins and outs, and you know how to train to avoid. Yeah. So, I'm just getting back to where you are there. So I suppose you're not panicking here and the dog's biting somebody, you know what I mean?
You're not panicking at all. It's just
but you look at another
occupational hazard.
If you look at another pet trainer,
aye,
right, we're in Lanarkshire. You go 5 minutes that way in Glasgow, 5 minutes that way in Lanark, right? And you've got these dog trainers.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody gets bit, they're going to fit, going to panic.
Aye.
Next thing you know, the dog's destroyed, their money's back, please don't put that on social media. Dogs aren't perfect, humans aren't perfect, so you need somebody like yourself who's been there, seen it, done it, and this is what I'm trying to get at, stripes on the given. If you rewind back to how are you able to deal with that? This is why Michael's earned his stripes, this is why I'm getting in contact with people like yourself.
As a dog trainer, even as a dog trainer in the civilian world now, I'll call it that, I've made mistakes.
Yeah.
And do you know what? And I'm sorry, but any dog trainer that says they've never made a mistake is lying.
Yeah.
Have the courage to stand up and say, do you know what? I've made a mistake here, and then deal with that mistake and own that mistake. Because I know many dog trainers that I'm friends with made really, silly and bad mistakes, but they've owned up to it and they wear those mistakes. Right? They wear them.
Yeah, you need to learn from it.
Well,
that's what I was getting at, if you're going back to that, that's, in my opinion, it's just another feather in your cap. If you want to put it that way, Dale Glasgow saying, another feather in your cap.
But, so back in the day, you're in Belfast, you're in this highly adrenalised area, you've got people kicking off, people being aggressive, people doing things they shouldn't be doing. So, lo and behold, if you've got a dog that maybe not want to let go, maybe that's not a bad thing when you're in that type of
scenario. Yeah.
But then again, nowadays things have to be proportionate, have to be lawful, it has to be necessary to use those levels of force. So that's the modern age and the modern situation we find ourselves in. And then lo and behold, I started really being interested in detection dogs from the explosive side of life. Right. And that's when I had my first spaniel, a Springer.
Just jump back and recap there. So went into the military, you've got an opportunity to work with dogs, you've took that with both hands, you finished top of your class, you've been assigned back to Northern Ireland as a dog handler. Yeah. Now you're in there, you're down the rabbit burrow, if you want to say that, and you're now going into spaniels with bomb detection, did you say that?
Well, mainly explosives, anything to do with explosive residue, so it could be anything to do with guns, anything to do with explosive devices, i.e. your IEDs, your bombs, etc.
So we've left Shane behind, we've left Sebastian behind.
Yeah, and now I've got Zach, who's a mad Springer Spaniel.
Mad kind of dogs.
Right, this mad Springer. And I'm like, what have I got myself into with this dog? It's a typical Springer, bounces from wall to wall. But when it comes to finding stuff, this dog is off the scale.
Unbelievable.
Right, the freeze detection on this dog was amazing. And I remember watching...
Freeze detection, can you explain that please?
So that's when the dog indicates onto an item and just looks at it and that's where it is. Right, so indicates that is a possibility where that item could be, right?
So
okay, so the item in
the dog is now hunting.
Yeah, the
stops,
item
points.
Yeah, the item in this.
And never dives in.
Just freezes on it. So the item in this case is obviously explosive residue or explosive device, whatever. Okay, a gun, you call it whatever you want. In that case, what would then happen is the EOD guys would come in. These are the explosives ordnance guys would come in.
Explosive ordnance.
So these are your bomb disposal guys. They would come in once the dog indicates on an area.
So you're front line before these boys come in?
Yeah, you would normally have the dog in front doing the business, okay? So you would normally go in, dog would do the business, indicate that there's an item there. You would then withdraw the dog. You would mark it in some way.
Pass the information on.
Right, pass that information, intelligence back to the explosives, ordnance guys. They would then come in with his big, protection suit on.
Fantastic.
And
just before you get into that, your fucking heart must be in your mouth.
Alright,
With the way the spaniels move.
Oh, you're working, the dog's working out in front of your distance anyway, so.
Right,
but
so
at the same time.
Oh, right. I thought you were maybe, the way you explained that there, I thought you were maybe in a room like so.
Yeah, well, I mean,
So
you're not too far away, but the dog's working in front of you.
Right, just for fun.
Yeah, you could be 12 metres,
right.
20 metres away, whatever, right? But the dog's working away in front of you. But that's not to say that if that dog steps on something...
So you say, that's not very far for a fucking bomb.
Yeah, so,
sorry for swearing, but it's not very, you're not getting much chance to cover it.
Let's be perfectly honest, if the dog steps on something it shouldn't, you might end up in the next postcode.
Yes,
right,
that's
when
exactly
it goes bang.
what I'm trying to get at.
I always use that as a bit of a reference.
Where is your anxiety this time? Where's your, how you cope with that?
It was something I never thought about because you're watching the dog, you're watching it work.
Too much focused on your own job?
You're so focused, you never think about the consequence if it goes wrong because you've not got time to think about it.
Right.
That's when those types of things are over and you go back to where you're chilling out. And at those times, you did have kennels for your dogs when you were working on Ireland, right? But the wee spaniel used to stay in my room.
Yeah.
It was, on the flare. Wouldn't be unusual for me to jump up in the bed, the wee idiot, and
just stop you again just before we go into passing information on to your colleagues, that are dismantling stuff like that. Where does the training come in? Surely you're not just giving a spaniel and saying this dog's going to work and point at a bomb.
I mean the training goes back to the school.
That's what I mean.
So it goes back to the school.
You've had to then go back again,
back to school
relearn
about how the dog indicates and the makeup of it and stuff like that.
So now you've went back to Shane and you've figured out how to break Shane down, how to communicate with Shane, how to bond with him. And then get that dog to be you and him. He's the worst dog there, you end up top of the class. Then you get Sebastian, you go to Northern Ireland, and then you understand, the triggers that trigger them, and the bits and bobs that come along with the job and how to train for that situation. Now you've left these two types again behind you, and you've come on to the Spaniel, who I would imagine that you've had to learn how to get him just like myself, if I'm out shooting, how to work close. And the reason I'm saying this is it's very, very similar when you take a dog into your rabbit pen, right? Especially a spaniel, and everybody will agree with this. It's very easy to make a spaniel point, right? If you're too hard on a dog in a pen, rather than the dog, imagine that your foot's the rabbit, rather than the spaniel coming in and pushing it out, it will find the rabbit and it will lock on, right? It's no good to nobody because you're there for the spaniel to produce the game, so it needs to push out the foot, picking up. So that's the skill, if you like it. So you can see the similarities, and I'm going to get into that when we go into the man trailing. You can see some similarities. Although it's two different sports, I can see similarities in going back to the gun dog training. So although you're just learning all these different things, I mean, so much of this can be used in the modern world. I mean, you should be able to, after this, turn into any sport you want. And I'm not saying that you're going to be at the top, but you're definitely not going to be the bottom. You're on your way, it's not as if you're starting now without any knowledge in your head, you know what I mean? You've really got a bit of experience behind you now, especially if you're passing intel on to colleagues and it's your dog, you're calling that back in and then going passing that on. So, or maybe a wee bit into your story here, but for what you've learned, it must be, it must be a lot. You're skipping by. You need to remember, we're here to plug, what you're doing and what your company doing and what you're going to be doing in the future. So you kind of just skip by your accolades and what you've learned, and how hard it would be. You know, the average person's not going to be able to go for, you know, 2 German Shepherds that are totally aggressive to maybe a soft shy spaniel that wants to sit in your bed. So no, let's carry on.
So let's say that you
don't want to get by, you know.
You go back, and a lot of the explosive dogs are already trained.
Right.
So it's about training you as a handler.
Right.
So and then when you're in Belfast and you leave Belfast, you pass that dog on to the next handler.
Right.
So that's what it was back in the day. That's what you did.
Right. So
okay. Nowadays, from what I understand, a lot of, especially from reading between the lines, that dog handlers were in Afghan in that.
Can you explain that then? So there's a big difference between training a dog and handling a dog.
So training is a completely different thing, because a lot of your experienced instructors will train those dogs back in the school. Okay, when you're a handler, you get the handler input that when your dog detects and you do this and how to handle the dog.
Right.
So then when you end up going out to places like Belfast where there's a detection dog in place, when you would generally then have that dog passed on to you, because back in the day, in the early military days, that the dog was just a military asset. It was part of military property that got passed on. Nowadays, I think, from reading between the lines, a lot of dogs spend a lot more time with their handlers going through the whole scenario.
But I take it as a handler, you must have some sort of indication, some sort of knowledge of how the dog is trained and its traits and what it does like.
So you go back and you work with other dogs and how they indicate and bits and pieces like that. So
you're a handler, you still learn, you know, a lot.
And then you might take a dog on which had quite a big bond with a previous handler, and you've now got to become that new handler, which was always sometimes could be difficult, but it was a case of building that bonding relationship. The dog knows its job. It's how you handle it. It's a different situation. Okay, and a handler, I've seen handlers mess up dogs.
Easy done.
You know, by just the wrong input. And that can happen. So moving on from there, I then leave Belfast, and then saw quite a few traumatic events and stuff like that. So didn't kick in at that time, and then I go back to my normal units, and then 1994 I finally leave the military, and then looking at the police from then. So then get involved with the police side of life, and again I can see this light. I want to be involved with dogs and that, and it didn't happen straight away, because the police are a completely different scenario. You're dealing with different dogs. You're dealing with general purpose dogs, which are dual purpose. You do one thing, do another. So I didn't get a great amount of opportunity to do it in police, but the opportunities that I did get made me better, made me realise that dogs are so versatile and can be used for different things like missing persons and drugs and various other things, and that gave me another insight. And again, it was one of those things when I was in police training that I saw dogs being worked alongside, and I said, right, that's what that's where I want to go, and that sort of thing took place again.
You've been in there and seen that's going on, your eyes are lighting up. Rubbing your hands, basically.
So, dog handling in the police is very difficult to get into. It's normally classed as a dead man's shoes.
Explain that.
So, one of them has to leave, or one of them has to retire for you to get into that section.
Right, understand.
So, it's almost like that. You're hoping somebody leaves because it's a well sought after.
Yeah, I understand that. So they don't really want a dog, with that bond breaking up.
So you normally, it's very difficult to get in it. You've got to fight to get in it. And my cousin, who was a dog handler up here in Strathclyde, I remember him saying to me one day, he said, when I was down south, transfer up from English forces, Scottish forces, and where. Lo and behold, when I get here in 2008, he's left and retired and gone to Australia. And I've now come up here, and the dog section in Strathclyde at the time had been depleted by the then Chief Constable. He'd then depleted it, which was reduced the amount of dogs, and that was a bit of annoyance for me, because dogs are so versatile, and having worked with dogs in the past, and then when I moved from the English force up to Scotland, and there was a couple of incidents that I attended in Scotland, and I never got to the dog handling stage in Scotland. It was down in England. So when I moved to the Scottish Police Service after my father had passed away, I came up here, you know, because I thought a new start, and I never got the chance to work up here with dogs.
Sorry to hear that.
So but I knew how versatile dogs were. I knew how good they could be to your assistants in the general policing side of life. And there was a couple of incidents I remember attending in Scotland, and I said, you know, where's the nearest dog? Can we get a dog here? And you know, it was almost like it was a case of, well, the nearest dog's like 40 minutes away, and my knowledge told me that trail could go cold by then.
Ah, right.
So
you're already looking at trails,
if we had to pick say an offender had entered a building,
right,
I would then ask for a containment to go on, and they were like, what are you on about? And I'm like, well, let's contain the building. We know he's in there. There's no point us climbing in there because we don't know where he is in that building. And then get a dog up to let the dog go in and find him, because the dog works on scent.
Yep.
And the dog will find them before we do, and it'll be much safer because dogs, like I say, are so versatile. So that really shocked me that the dog section had been depleted up here. So unfortunately, when I came up to Strathclyde in 2008, I wasn't able to work here. But going back down south, I remember working back then, and I remember getting called out because, as I said, dogs are so versatile, and they were looking for somebody that had gone to ground down south, and it was in the Windsor area, and we were up the road, and I remember getting a call and saying, you know, somebody had gone to ground, and the dog found them within minutes. Put the dog on a tracking line, bang, there we go. Didn't even have to let him off the lead. The noise of the bark and everything else was enough to bring that offender out.
So they're just pulling you on and barking.
Aye, so you know, it's like, you know, dogs indicating there. I remember another incident, really funny. I've got to talk about this. So, where there was a car chase coming into the Heathrow area near London, and the car chase was coming from Surrey Constabulary, coming into the Heathrow area, and I remember we were involved in the whole thing going on, and the car chase goes into an area just north of the airport, West Drayton, and dog section were there, and this car chase coming in, and we can hear it on the radio coming in from Surrey, that then switches on your channel. So this car goes into this housing estate, and the two guys in it had just robbed a store in Guildford, and they'd made their way to this area. So they dispersed from the car, so we then show up, and dog has a quick sniff around the car, and then dog starts tracking to the house. So as we get to the house, there's this sort of lean-to bin cupboard, and dog's indicating on the bin cupboard. You know, it's one of these things that you open up where you put your bins in. So dog's indicating, says to the cop, he's in there. So dog's telling me, in there. So they open this bin cupboard, and the dog's on a line, and the dog just goes tonto, and the guy's like, don't let the dog in there. So they then give him the jail as such, cuff him and start leading him away. So we're still outstanding one offender. So we're walking back to the car, and this guy comes out one of the pubs that's just closed, giving it swagger. Oh, what are the police doing here and all that? And the dog latches straight on him. Dog just latched on him.
I guess associated the smell of the car, the smell of him with him.
And I said, here's your second guy there.
Is that right? Brilliant, man.
Lo and behold.
No, brilliant for the guy, right? I'm cheering for the baddie here, but, you know, I just think it's brilliant because I can.
So the guy comes out of the pub, he was acting all smart and clever and everything else, and the dog just latched straight on it. It was so funny.
It's typical. Somebody always comes back to the scene of the crime.
The dog latches on him, and he gets to jail as well. We got away back to Guildford. It was brilliant. And
this is yourself as a dog handler, yeah?
So
you're getting back with it.
So we went to Guildford, and we got to put the report in.
Proudest punch.
It was a great, so like I said, that was taken back down south. So we're back up in Scotland and didn't get the chance to do it. Moving on my police career, like I always knew dogs were so good. Okay, I'd been involved with road traffic police and everything else as well, and I remember they had a thing in Scotland that my cousin was involved in, because he was a dog handler up here, and I remember him talking about it. They called something a T5 dog, and it was a Volvo T5 estate car which was used at traffic at the time, the road policing, and had a dog in the back. Because 9 times out of 10 what was happening is every time there was a car chase, there was a dispersal of the people in that car chase. So what they did was they teamed a traffic driver up, roads policing officer up with a dog handler.
Right.
Do you imagine the versatility of that?
Yeah.
So you've now got what they classed as, because it was T5 estates, they used high performance.
I'll be honest with you, if I had done it and the fucking release a dog, I'd just put my hand up. Can I hang back?
So with that, the dog is permanently sighted, so the handler just used to open the back door and the dog had gone. Right, that's it, nailed. And that was actually a great thing back then. I remember, listening to my cousin tell me about it. He said it was absolutely brilliant. Just to drive around with a traffic driver, or road policing officer, as you call.
You see some of it on TV.
And they just released the dog, and the dog's permanently sighted, because a lot of the time as well, when you've got a dog in the back of a dog van, you've got to go around the back, open it up, and let the dog out. Okay. And then the dog runs off and does its work. But that was quite comical when you used to see that. So that said, I was involved in roads policing in London as well, and the build up of that and the build up of the trauma and all that, and seeing traumatic incidents and post traumatic, and being in Belfast, that's when things started to catch up with me.
Yeah, I was going to refer back to that. Unfortunately, my dad, my Uncle Billy, shout out my Uncle Billy, they were in Northern Ireland when the troubles were there. Seen some horrible things.
Yeah.
My dad's elder than you, maybe about 15 years on you, and these things that happen, that's fine, you go through life, 10 years, 15 years later, the night traumas can start, I was just coming back here, things that happened, maybe 10 years down the line that we won't talk about, definitely we won't talk about, but, they've lived with you, affected your mental health. Now you're, different career, but it's still troubling you.
So
you think that the dog's really, not saying the dog's your one way, but certainly a pet dog can help you through the.
So a couple of the things that I want to just brush over quickly, how I got to the mental health side of life was there was a couple of incidents I dealt with that started to sort of affect me. There was I went to this motorcycle accident where they worked out later that the impact of this motorcyclist was when the incident happened was about 140 plus miles an hour. So when you arrive, it seems like it's not nice. I mean, you've got a guy who's got a hole right through his body. His right hand is in the carriageway, severed off, bits of his body in different places. So, when you start to see things like that, it does affect you.
But I couldn't do it.
But back in the day, if you brought it up way back in the early 80s or maybe 90s, you're almost looked upon as weak if you brought it up.
That was it.
Right, got on with the job.
Toe the line.
But what really hit home was later on in life when I started remembering these things, and times when I had to go to somebody's house and deliver a death message around a Christmas period for a 14-year-old girl.
And this is things that your average Joe know.
Things start catching up. And then I was on a surveillance job one day. We were hiding in a van, and unfortunately there was an incident taking place nearby, so that knocked our surveillance right out the window. Right, we couldn't stay sneaky for any much longer, but we drove the van away and then come back with different vehicle. But there was an incident taking place at the time where there was a guy demonstrating top of his mum's 3-bedroom house on a roof. Right, this is like a local house. He's on the roof. He'd knocked himself through the loft and came through the roof, and we were on the pavement.
I think this is on the telly. Is it throwing tiles at you?
It was very similar with throwing tiles.
I think this is televised.
Right, so this guy is now on the roof, and lo and behold, a little bit into the scenario, he then takes a run and jump off the top of the roof head first. And as he takes this run and jump, he's shouting Superman, right? and then this guy lands in front of us, and
No,
I remember you had a clinical debrief after that. It was like a debrief with everybody around the table, and they were asking you to remember or speak about what you'd witnessed and how it affected you. And I remember somebody saying to me that was taking that debrief, saying, "What do you remember about the incident?" And I said, "All I can remember was the noise of a watermelon." And he went, "What do you mean by that?" And I said, "He landed in front of me, and what it reminded me of was a watermelon bursting on the floor." So this guy's head just burst on the floor. So if you think of that and the noise of a watermelon, if you just dropped it.
Yeah, I don't even want to think about it, man.
So that's what I always remember. So lo and behold, I'm dealing with incidents going through my career, and then you get calls to houses where there's a hanging, and you walk through the door and you don't expect. And there's one house in particular. I remember one of my colleagues, Greg, the two of us walked into this house, and we didn't expect the body to be directly in front of us when we opened the door. And we walk in, and this guy's hanging with an electrical cable from the radiator pipe or the heating pipe, and we walk straight into this body. At the time, you deal with the situation, you're dealing with all the trauma and everything else, and then laterally, when I was up here in Strathclyde, and then which lateral became Police Scotland, I was dealing with incidents where people had taken their life, and a lot of times, and you know, it catches up with you because you're talking about walking into premises. You need to deal with the effects of these people hanging from stuff, and
especially Strathclyde. If you're in Strathclyde, you know, the amount of young boys from 1999 to now,
yeah, it's
17 to 25 now. It's, you know, it's every week.
So it's
every week.
A human body, a human being, you know, in front of you, and for whatever reason that they've taken the life, that it catches up with you, and as much as you want to admit it doesn't, it sneaks up on you, and then you realise. And you know, I've had a couple of marriages in my life, and I remember speaking to one of my colleagues, and he said that can be down to your PTSD, because you're never the same person. You're dealing with different things in different ways. And my way to deal with it was, I mean, I was a nightmare to live with in some cases, and the way I dealt with it was probably the wrong way, and you go off the rails a bit, because it's not normal for the human mind to deal with those types of scenarios, right? But it catches up with you. And one of my mates said to me one day, he said, you know, the reason you've maybe had a couple of failed marriages is because it's maybe been down to the PTSD, and I never ever thought of it that way. But then when I started thinking about some of the things that was troubling me and what I got up to, maybe it was. So fast forward, I leave the police service in 2019, retire at the age of 52. And prior to doing it, I entered the civilian dog training industry about 2 or 3 years before I retire, because I want to start making those ways in, right?
Civilian dog training, what's
right.
that, you know?
So I now enter the dog training industry and start on stuff like the basics of dog training, the basics, foundations, putting them in place for dog owners, and looking at behaviour rehabilitation, dogs that have got unwanted behaviours and how to stop them.
Right.
So I've then started doing courses and working with various people to get as much knowledge as possible, to gain that knowledge, because remember, everything I have come from has been, you know, working with dogs in the military or the police or whatever.
So you've not just, you know, although you've retired, you've not just relied on what you've already learned. You know, you're still getting out there,
I mean,
relearning.
I've got my driving licence, and I could have entered any industry, but no, I wanted to be involved with dogs. So I've started this, and I started gaining a bit of a reputation for being somebody that's good working with dogs.
Yep.
And I remember somebody saying to me in the police service as well, you know, I don't know why you don't do this for a living, because you're really good at it. Again, somebody telling me or giving me that sort of endorsement, you're good at this, right? So I enter the civilian industry, and then I retire from the police, and I start to see things. I get involved with lots of different trainers, because I think everybody can bring something to the table, right? No matter what background you come from. And there's a lot of politics in dog training. And just brushing that, you've got the positive only, you've got force free, you've got balance, you've got people who are very compulsive based and stuff like that. But everybody has the ability to bring something, right? If you're very closed-minded and you only think there's one way, well, you're the problem, right? So you have to look at everybody and what they bring. So by delving into everybody's avenue, and I've worked with some really good positive only trainers, trust me, and they're really good at what they do, but they're the first to admit that we don't live in a positive only world, and there's dogs that they won't be able to touch because it goes against their ethos. And I admire them for coming out with that, to say I wouldn't be able to fix that because it doesn't fit in with the ethos that I train with.
Yeah.
But it's the ones that say everything can be sorted with a piece of cheese or a cookie, right?
See, this is where I don't even want to give my personal opinion on it because I would get shot down because I would just pull the trigger on them all. But there's a lot of people out there who prey on people who don't know anything about dogs but just buy a dog and they want to do the right thing. They're going to rate it correctly, they're going to spend their money out and try their best to train it.
But you know what?
Rather than somebody telling them to come back every fortnight, going away and learn that, they want them to come back as much as they're willing to afford. A lot of these.
So like I say, I mean, I'm a firm believer that everybody has something to bring to the table, and whether you agree with that person or you don't agree with this one, it's neither here or there. Everybody has something to bring. It's what you do with that information. It's what you do with that knowledge and how you then bring it on and then you use it. So I came into contact with a lot of trainers. I'm going to mention quite a few of them here. So the ones that I've personally done a little bit of work with on tours and stuff are like your Larry Crones, who's known as, you know, he's wrote his own book about the e-collar, right, and how to use it and everything else. And I have no doubt it's helped a lot of people. Then I've spent some time with Sean O'Shea, who doesn't get a great rep as well, but I like Sean and some of the ethos and some of the ideas that he uses, and he works with a lot of really aggressive dogs. And then you're looking at, you know, I've actually spent time in Jeff Gilman's company, and Jeff is renowned for being a bit over the top, and that's what other people are thinking. But as I said before, I like to think everybody brings something to the table. And then obviously spent time conversing with people like Duke Ferguson from Canada. Let's say you've got Larry from the States, you've got Jeff from the States, you've got, you know, Sean O'Shea for the States, and then we come back to the UK, and I've spent time with do you know how when you got somebody's name on the tip of your tongue?
Yeah, don't worry.
I've worked with that many people, and then I've spent quite a lot of time in the company of Danny Wells, and Danny's got quite a reputation for being quite outspoken on the internet. You know what I mean? But he's very good at what he does, and he deals with a lot of really aggressive dogs. And then, you know, that's all about the behaviour rehabilitation type side of life that I worked with. What I did notice when I left the police service and entered the dog training industry in the civilian world, I noticed a lot of pinch collars and e-collars were the common thing to be used. Right?
Can I ask you a question? Do you think that's a cheat? Do you think that's an easy way to train a dog?
I think they're being overused.
What I mean with that is, see if I can spend, if you give me a dog, right, me personally, and you tell me what you need it worked on, and I'll put the foundations in and give you that dog back trained, right? But do you think by me putting an e-collar on, I can do it in half the time? And that's just, you know, it's the American way, you know.
For me, that's somebody not utilising it appropriately. I'm not using it, I'm putting the foundations, but you brought the word
maybe
foundation.
I asked that wrong. Yeah. What I mean is, with your average Joe using you know, if a dog wants to sit and stay, me and you should be able to go out and show a dog how to sit and stay correctly, you know, and it won't take us that long, right? But you give your average Joe the e-collar, they'll get that dog sitting and staying within 10 minutes.
Ah, but they might ruin the dog.
I'm not saying they won't, but at the end of the day, the dog will still sit and stay. You know, these are the people that have wrecked the reputation of the e-collar. See, when I watch like Andy Fairweather, Honour of Gun Dogs, you know, use an e-collar. You know, it's an art. You know, it's a.
But these are the guys that's put foundations in place.
Yes.
Right.
So that gets
all
back
about
to my question. Do you think that the e-collar is just a cheap, easy way for your average Joe
Absolutely.
to wreck a dog?
Absolutely.
You know,
And listen, I stand by that comment. If you do not condition a dog properly, if you're just strapping it on for a quick result, you don't deserve to be anywhere near it.
Mate, what I try to say to people is, I've got 2 young dogs in the kennel there, right? 8 months, 7 months, but they're bigger, you know, than the dogs in there at 2 and 3 that are in the crate. You know, just because they're, you know, they're the size, it doesn't mean mentally they can take, you know, what you're about to give them there.
I think it's important that every dog
this is how I like to speak to people like yourself, and you know, I get interested in people like yourself because you've got an understanding in what it takes to show the dog, you know, and there's a place for these tools, but given to your average Joe, shouldn't be allowed. I think you should have to pass, like, it wouldn't be a bad thing, a wee course to learn how to use an e-collar before getting one, something like that, you know. And that's something like somebody for yourself or, you know, the people you've mentioned could probably come up with.
But like I was saying, when I first entered the sort of industry in the civilian world, if you want to call it that, I seen a massive use of them.
Yeah.
And that, at first I thought, oh, this must be the end thing, right? Because to me, I'd never seen them used before or utilised before. Certainly in the police or the military, I'd never seen them utilised. We had check chains and all that, right? And first saver chains, whatever way you kind of call it. But those were, you know, that's what we used back in the day. My first military dog was just a normal leather collar and a lead. That was it, you know, and he never even had a chain. So when I entered and I seen this being used, I thought, that must be the end thing. And I'll be honest, and I started using them for a short period of time, and I went, whoa, hold on a wee minute, I'm losing all my knowledge here. Of what,
yeah, I was trying to say that, you know, the stuff you know, you see it and buy that, just fucking...
And I'm like, hold on a minute, I've got more knowledge here, and I'll be honest, I can count in one hand the amount of times I've utilised one.
Yeah.
Right, so...
No, I'm not against e-collars and I'm not for them.
Oh,
the reason I like them is...
They've saved a lot of dogs.
Well, see, the lectures, I'm a lecture man, right, and I always will be to the day I die. The reason I don't run lectures anymore is I'm sick looking over my shoulder for people like you chasing me. But what I could see and what I've seen is some lectures will just no stop chasing. They'll just see a sheep and they'll just want to chase it. That's it. Like, there's nothing you can do. I mean, it's weeks and weeks of training, nothing you can do. They're just no steady sheep. Just a sheep, they just want to go and kill a sheep. The e-collar, I've seen it done 100 times. They put the e-collar on, they put it up to full, let the dog go. Agreement for the farmer, get towards the sheep, you time it, right? As soon as you see the dog opening, you press that button. The lecture now thinks the sheep are electric and it will never get near another one, and it only takes the one short sharp and that's it. So, you know, just for that case, they should be, you know, I'm for them I suppose in that case, you know what I mean, but for people out doing what I do, you know, handling onto dummies, you know, at far distances, because they can't be arsed going from here to there to fit, you know, to show the dog back to the spot, they can press a button in their pocket, you know, to me it takes the fun out of the training, takes the skill out of the training, but when you look at boys like, you know, I don't know if Andy will probably not use them anymore if they're banned or whatever, but you look at boys like him using them, you know, it's an art, you know, it's a full different thing, you know, like the things that you do with a dog, totally different to what I'll do, and that's what I'm interested in. I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon and try and learn what you're doing because I'm focused on what I'm doing, but I'm just interested in it.
So, like I was saying, I saw a lot of this being used and I thought, you know, I've got knowledge here that I should be using it, and I can't remember the last time off the top of my head when I actually utilised one.
Yeah.
That's how far back it's gone. And I'm seeing more of them being used by people who are not really trained to use them right, and they shouldn't be anywhere near them as far as I'm concerned. So moving on into that, and I've done, I think there was 1 year alone.
Does it frustrate you a wee bit if you've got a customer coming and my problem, and the reason one of the reasons I stopped doing it is people coming to me to get their dog trained, they're telling me how to train their dog.
Aye.
Does that happen to you as well?
Well, now I just say bye-bye.
Yeah, and that's one of my pet hates. They bring a dog out, the dog jumps out, shouts in my garden straight away, so I know it's not even been let out.
Right.
Then they tell me how they've got to train their dog, and then they hand me an e-collar. I'm just like,
Look, if somebody's coming to me for my knowledge and advice, they're there for my knowledge and advice. If they then come to me and say, I want my dog trained this way, I'll be saying bye-bye. Alright, because they need to understand that, you know, what I'm about to give them is 2 years to put together.
Yeah, so that, you know, if you think about it and lifetime terms, you know, you probably get nearly 2 lifetimes of experience before you go into civilian dogs. So now that you're into civilian dogs, have you got your canine, what do you call it, business set up, you know?
Yeah, so my business is canine psychology.
And when was that established?
That was first put together in about 2017, 2 years prior to retirement.
Right, so it was a plan before you got out.
Yeah, so I then the canine training side of it, and then literally it was based on a lot of foundation work going in place and things like behaviour rehab.
And how are you getting your customers through word of mouth here? Or
I've not actually advertised since 2017.
Brilliant.
A lot of my work comes of word of mouth, which I'm
it's
very
the best advertisement you can't buy it.
I mean, I've got reviews, over hundreds of reviews in regards to people I've worked with, and that you can't beat that.
No, my.
So like I say, they got involved with that, and then further down the line I had the opportunity to get involved with man trailing.
And this is why I contacted you,
which is basically training dogs to find people.
Yeah.
The same techniques that are used by search and rescue, the police and the military, okay? Where we use our dogs, first sense, which is the nose, to obviously find stuff, and we can train dogs as young as 12, 13 weeks old, as long as they've had their vaccinations, because every dog's got a nose, no matter the breed. And
10,000 times stronger than the human nose, eh?
Well, if you think of a dog, between 300 million and 500 million nasal receptors, in that olfactory system, and we've got like 5 million.
Yeah,
right?
It's one of my friends actually across the road, a really good dog, man. I had dogs who was 5-year-old dog, his name is. He follows you, we were speaking about you the other day, and I'd never told him I had you in for a podcast. I let him just figure it out on YouTube. And he's speaking really highly of you, and I was like, it just shows you, although it's the man trailing, that got my attention, it just shows you, like, he's not an idiot, he's not following, people that are the best of the best. So that's one of the reasons we got in contact with Michael, and I'm glad you come on, and this is what I want to learn about, because I feel as if I can put bits of that into gun dog training, but I can associate a spaniel taking the line, a running bird, a running rabbit, to the basics of a young dog learning how to man trail. And if you think about it, imagine every dog in the UK, right, being able to learn this for a cheap fee, and just your basic dog learning that. All these young boys going missing, and people looking for suicidal people. You get 40 dogs in a scheme that can do that. Whoever that is will be found in no time. But we'll get into that and we'll see.
My first...
Sorry to run away.
My first real man trailing dog was my Rottweiler, who passed away last year. I got him when he was 18 months old.
Bigger the dog, bigger the heartbreak.
He's a great dog. He'd been through 3 previous families before he got to me at 18 months old. Nobody knew how to control him. He came with a few issues. A few issues which I had to solve, because the ultimate consequence for him was to go to the vet and get put down.
Yeah.
So I worked through some really hard stuff with him, and
He must have seen something in him though.
Yeah, there was something about him, and I learned a lot from him. He taught me a lot, trust me. And I learned a lot from him. And he wasn't perfect, no dog is, but he wasn't perfect when he finally passed away, but it was as perfect as could have been.
So in other words, what you're saying is you brought the best out in what that dog had, and that's all a handler, gun dog trainer can do. If you can bring the top out in that dog and get it to peak.
And he was a great dog, and I have to be honest and say, one of the best dogs I've ever had the privilege of spending my life with. And he passed away last year, and that left a massive hole. Prior to him passing away, I'd had a Mali prior to that, and then he passed away about over 2 years ago, and then that's when I got my first gun dog as a pet.
One of the bits I'm looking forward to.
So I got my little Cocker Spaniel back, and I've never looked back. I have to say, I've never looked back. So this is when I started getting involved with the gun dog guys. I've always wanted something to do when I retire, to go to my dog and just beat and flush and retrieve and do all that. And some of the gun dog guys that I know say, why on earth did you get a working cocker? They're absolutely loopy. But do you know what? He's turned out to be one of the best dogs ever. And everybody comments on him and how good he is. So ultimately I was going to get him to do the search work, but he was so good at that. And then
takes it very quickly.
And this is when I started getting involved with the gun dog guys, and this is when I met Chris Upton and I started conversing with him. And listen,
is this where the beard comes from?
No, so
what I mean, Chris?
I got
on
in my house in Fireby, and we have some pretty back and forth banter. And there's a lot of guys on his group, the Corleone gun dog group that he's formed, and that's what he is. And listen, a lot of the guys have a bean on it about Chris, and they don't like the way he trains, but I've learned a lot from him, and I've learned a lot from all the guys in that group, and they have a get together every Sunday on a live feed, and it's quite funny because we start talking about dogs and then it just goes off in another tangent, and we're all probably normally sitting with a glass of whiskey. I
don't think it's about the way Chris, for what I know of Chris, I don't think it's about the way he trains. I think it's about how he speaks his mind.
Listen,
Chris, I'm not saying he could, in fact probably saying he could have, if Chris could have shut his mouth, Chris would be the championship every year.
Chris is very, what I like about Chris is he's very open and honest, right? He doesn't beat about the bush, he'll tell you how it is, but that upsets the type of world we live in now, right? People can't take that, and although it may come across as a criticism, right, it's a positive at the outcome, because you'll then, if you've got the nuts to then sit down and go, do you know what, that was a good point he brought up, and I'll go away and work on it and then come back. He'll then give you the gratitude for then going away and working on it and coming back with it fixed.
Listen, I'll be open and honest. I've phoned Chris, and Chris will tell you that if you ask him. I've phoned him on his private number, and we've spoke. We've had a couple of conversations, we've had a couple of things that we never agreed on, but at the end of the day I was still phoning him, asking him for his help with his experience, and listen, shout out to Chris Upton and his channel. He's always been, giving me the best advice he could give me. Nothing more and nothing less, nothing more than he's not saying he's your pal, at least he's answered the phone and he's give you a bit of advice, and sometimes for younger folk coming into the game and trying to understand things, it goes a long way, and it brings you back to your own dog, so you're following Chris Upton straight away.
So, like I said, a lot of people don't agree with him, but I like him because he speaks his mind, and I'm very much a person that speaks my mind, and some people don't like that, and do you know what? I really don't care, because if the truth hurts you, do you know what? Don't come and ask me the question if you don't like the truth. So my wife often says, don't ever ask him to answer the truth, because he'll give you it, right? And sometimes that might not sit well. And I like to go down the route of, especially in dog training, right? People want you to be all pink and fluffy, right? They want to tell you how good they are, right? They don't like the truth. I'm very much of the opinion, I like to tell people what they need to hear, not what they want to hear.
Yeah.
So, that's the way I look at it. And Chris, in the past, has been open and honest, says, and he tells me what I need to hear. Might not be what I want to hear, but certainly it's sometimes what you need to hear, and that's why I like him, because he tells you what you need to hear. you know, I'm not there to.
That's the way gun dog training's gone now.
You know, when people come to me for an opinion, I'm not there to massage your emotions. I'm there to give your dog the best outcome. And sometimes that might be a hard pill for people to swallow.
Yeah.
Right. So, like I said, I've now got my working cocker. And I remember Chris saying to me the first time he met my dog, and it was up in Aberdeen. I got invited up to the shoot and see how it was working. I had my wee dog in the back of the car.
Is that up at Robin and Rachel Watson's?
And I never got him back out.
Shout out to Robin and Rachel, really nice people. So
I never got him out the car till after the guys were having their lunch and all that. And Chris said, "Oh, how good's your recall?" And I went away over on the field and a recall, and he's like, "Well, that's good." And there was some like cold game line there as well, and the dog was interested. And then I remember Chris saying to me, "Do you think you'll ever be able to dual train that dog? Will you be able to train search and be a gun dog?" I said, "Well, I don't see why not, because in the military and the police we train dogs to be general purpose. Your German Shepherd can search for persons, and he can also, you know, do other things as well." So I said, "Right, okay." And lo and behold, I've now got a man trailing, searching for a person dog, and I've also now got a gun dog, because this was his first season actually out in the field. I didn't want to push him on too quick, so this was his first big season out flushing, beating, and then laterally, a few weeks ago, rather than just beating all the time and maybe picking up birds that have been missed, he was doing all the retrieving last week, or about 2 weeks ago, and there was actually one of the guns said, "I want you behind me," because that dog was just picking everything up.
Yeah.
Right, and that's a little working cocker, right? And do you know what? I turned round and looked at him and I went, "Do you know what? You make me so proud, wee man."
So did they say, you can hear the proudness in your voice talking about him.
He's absolutely amazing. And do you know something? People say gun dog trainers can be quite harsh, right? And they can be quite stern and they can be right over the top. Trust me, that little bugger of mine cuddles up with me on the couch at night, right? And there's nothing better than having a working cocker as a hot water bottle, right? Because that's what he is. And do you know what? That wee dog goes everywhere with me, and everybody that meets him and everybody that witnesses him says he's a cracking wee dog. And
because it opens your eyes then getting into the gun dog world, seeing what he was bred to do, if you want to put it that way, and then you twisting the training room, and haven't been able to is that the word, differentiate?
There's nothing better.
That side of the training.
For me, there's nothing better than watching a dog doing what he was bred to do.
Yeah.
And it gives you so much satisfaction than watching that dog thriving and being the best it can be. And stuff like that just makes you so happy to be in that. And like I say,
no, it's good to hear.
I get paid to take my dog walking, if you think about it.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's good to hear that, even going through everything you've went through, Michael, and the knowledge you've got, you're still, at this age, at this point in life, you're no contempt in what you already know. Now you're stepping into the gun dog world, I'm not saying like you're looking at Chris as a messiah, then you're just taking a wee bit of what he's doing, putting into your own training.
But like I said,
shout out to the shoots that you've been invited on.
I think it's important that you take something from everybody.
Yeah.
And even the guys that I've been out on the shoots with, gaining little bits and questioning name and stuff like that. And Gary, who's a good friend that lives down in Leicestershire, Nottinghamshire, if I got
it
right. Gary's a really good mate, and we
don't know you, Gary, but I have heard of you.
Yeah, we converse quite a lot, and he's one of Chris's students, if you want to call that. He's learned a lot from Chris, and he's out his own teaching it now, and he's doing really well, and he's putting a lot in place, and he's got 3 cockers now, and Gary's going to be breeding the bitch he got in maybe in 2 years' time, and off of one of his dogs, which I think will produce a very good litter. So there's me with my working cocker, and now
you're looking 5 years ahead, 2, 3 years ahead.
And now I'm looking to get a Labrador for retrieving as well.
For God's sake!
And I've taken quite a bit of flack after.
No, don't get up too loud.
I've been taking quite a bit of flack.
Tell you something. If you want a good dog, so fingers crossed, they'll be the best litter in Lanarkshire born in the last 25 years. That's my opinion. So don't get a bloody Labrador.
Yeah, so
I want you need something big, exciting.
Yeah,
No,
like a
I'll need-
working lab.
Tell you what I need to do.
Right, so
Tell you what I need to do. I'll need to bring you. Right, so you've seen a wee bit of, you know, what's expected of a dog on a shoot day, and what's reasonable, and you know you see your working cock and she's fucking some engine on him. I'll need to bring you on a rough shooting day for rabbits, but in training towards field trials, and show you it's another rabbit barra, the difference in training a spaniel for your shoot. Sorry guys, just changing the battery there.
So I was saying about the Labrador. A lot of the gun dog guys are actually ripping me up because they're saying I must be getting old because I'm getting a Labrador. So like I said, it's fueled another passion getting involved with the wee fella, that I want to be more involved in. And there's nothing better, as I said, getting out there and watching a dog work.
Yeah, doing it.
So you know, that takes me on. So yeah, that's my next stage of life. But I've also just started home boarding dogs.
Yeah.
For
how do people find out about that?
Well, if you log on to my training page, Canine Psychology, Canine Trainer, and Scent Detection Man Training,
We'll find that on.
You'll find all that on there. So we're actually boarding dogs.
Find that on Facebook.
Aye, it's on Facebook or on the website as well. You can get that on there because we've got the website. If you log on caninepsychology.uk, if you log on there, all the stuff's on there for boarding, all your service costs and everything else.
That's quite a new thing you've just started.
Home boarding's something I started, and the reason being is I'm at an age now where, you know, I want to give a little bit back as well. And one of the things I noticed was that when I was going visiting my wife's family on the other side of the world in Australia, I had to put my dogs into kennels. And then last year what I did was I put them into home boarding, which was a much better scenario for me. And that's where I went with it. And I felt a lot more confident as well that my dogs were in a home environment, as such, a house environment, whereby it was in a family home.
Yeah.
And they were treated that way. Sometimes I think with kennels, you know, as a dog lover, and my dogs are my passion, is that sometimes I feel that might be a bit isolated for them.
I think peace of mind with the dog.
And I think, you know, the person that I used as well was known to me, so, and they had their home boarding business, and they actually mentioned if I wanted to do something like that. So that was Angela Turner from Turner Dog Training, and she does her home boarding, and she was a person that shadowed me for training, and she started up her own training business now as well. So she shadowed me for a period of time.
And is that an option for folk, or?
Aye, I mean, if somebody wants to come and shadow me and learn a bit, that's fine. There's 2 people shadowed me so far in regards to dog training.
When you say shadow, you know, they're coming, you know, maybe holding the camera, learning your tricks, your trades, learning how you break down a dog, how you understand a dog, and you'll take the time out to explain to them. That I take it that'll be totally different for your kennel, so that'll be your canine psychology.
That's about them coming on jobs with me for behaviour rehab and spotting things that they need to start spotting.
That's great.
And how you converse with people, because communication with dog owners is a big thing. How to get them to understand that this is the best avenue, the best route you're going to go down, and how to communicate with them.
That's 2 options, and then we've got, you know, the one that I'm quite interested in. I think it's one of the fastest growing sports in the
well, man trailing is
dog training world.
So man trailing, I mean, if you want to start man trailing, you can start a dog as soon as it's had its vaccinations. It can start as early as 12,
That's
13,
for everybody.
Yeah,
regardless of age.
Yeah,
you know,
we've had dogs 10 years old, and we've had dogs that, you know, slightly older than that, and we've had dogs at 13, 14 weeks old, starting to learn straight away.
And what about an older couple, you know, watching this and saying, you know, they would quite like to get into that, but they're not too sure about the house and that? I'm pretty sure your training and accommodation could suit that.
Yeah, I mean, we've had people come train with us in a mobility scooter, believe it or not.
Fantastic, fantastic.
And what we do is we sort of, you know, design the training round them.
Right.
We've had people that have got disabilities of various natures, and we've...
But they're still getting the chance to walk their own
it.
dog and go on their own trails.
It's very low impact as well for the dog and you. If you can think of when my little cocker goes beating and flushing, he's constantly on the go.
Yep.
But with man trailing type scenarios, we can design the training around the person.
Mm-hmm.
We also deal with reactive dogs, whether they're human reactive or whether they're dog reactive, because what we found is once the dog's actually working, that reactivity becomes a bit of an irrelevance for them.
And again,
but if you're a bit concerned about your dog being human reactive, we can design the training around that as well.
And again, would it be easier for folk to find that on the website or find us on Facebook?
They can contact us on Facebook or on the website, and we can obviously look at that as well. We do intros, an introduction to the course every so often.
And where is it you're mainly based?
We normally do a lot of it in North Lanarkshire. We have been asked...
So you're on my patch, basically?
Yeah, we have been asked. Last year we drove all the way up to the north of Scotland, the Highlands, and we ran a course up there for 2 days in the summer.
Brilliant.
And we had 22 dogs in 2 days. People had never done it before, and it was a great 2 days we spent up there. And that was up at Samantha Stark's place. That she's got great ground up there. Samantha runs her own dog training business up there as well, and boarding business. So I've known Samantha for years, and she moved up to the north of Inverness.
So it's good that you can liaise with different dog trainers, and use each other's ground and this and scratch each other's back.
Samantha invited us up for 2 days to run a course up there for 2 days for her, and like I say, we had 22 dogs over a 2 day period.
I know you can't put a number, like exactly on it, but me bringing a fresh, or just your average Joe Blogs bringing a fresh dog to you, and they're interested in the man trailing, they want to get into it, and enjoy it, if you like. When are you starting to see a wee bit of results? When can
you can start to see the dogs,
just depending on the dog,
getting into it as soon as possible, as soon as it starts.
Brilliant.
It's all about building those foundations, and you can see when you put the foundations in place, some dogs get it really quickly and some don't.
And when people come to you, this will be broke down, and you'll explain.
And some dogs you have to problem solve.
How this goes.
Some dogs might be a little bit nervous, some dogs might be over zealous,
and you're able to cater for them.
Yeah, so it's about how you control that overzealousness or that nervousness, how to bring that dog on, how you switch it about, how you change scenarios to help that dog come on better. We've had dogs that are, that are scared of noise and scared of people and reactive, and you've seen those dogs develop really well. And we've had dogs that are being reactive develop really well.
So further down the line, is there any competition in this? Is there any awards in this?
Well, there's some of the organisations award you little certificates for getting better.
So is there tests, field tests?
You can put tests in place with some of the organisations. What we tend to do, what we like to do with our group's a very social group. Okay. We will go out and we will train, and we'll get together, and we have a social group. So
it's a chance for people to meet different trainers.
Yeah, this is a chance for...
we just work your dog, you're getting out, you're meeting new folk,
This is a group of people that we've put together, and we have our own WhatsApp group and everything, okay, and we can converse and we can swap and change ideas, and our group's growing, week by week as more people come. And as a social gathering as well, what we do is we get together after it, and we go and sit and we have coffee and we have lunch and stuff like that as well. So I have some of my participants or clients, if you want to call them that, they actually meet up together as well later on, and they've got together and they become firm friends and stuff like that. So it's about bringing people together who have got the same passion, because I remember my mother saying once,
and this is for
whenever you've got a dog and you're out walking, people will stop to and talk to you.
Correct.
Right? And they always want to talk to you and stuff like that.
You always see a single guy, get a young cocker with his tail dog to go walk around Strathpine Park in the summer, you'll get everybody there.
So like I say, we've got quite a social active group where we meet up as well. So.
And it's very easy for folk to join. absolutely fantastic. And as you know, I've already told you prior to this conversation, you know, I think I'm just going to go into the dogs full time in June. You know, there's enough. Could probably do it now, but I don't want to do it until I've set up right. But it's two totally different things. But that's no saying, you know, I've got a couple of retired dogs sitting in there now. You know, that's no saying that, you know, I would love, I probably will, you know, be in contact very soon, you know, just to see how easy it is to switch, you know, the dog onto that and learn a couple of new skills, and absolutely fantastic. But I would like to do as well, Michael, is thank you. You know, me and you don't know each other if you had them at all. I've been watching your videos, I've been trying to figure out who you are, I've spoke to a few different people, and thanks very much for coming through, doing the podcast. You know, it's no easy, especially with me, working all over the place at times. But
the other thing as well, that you just brought up a point there about you've been watching me, because, you know, there's times when things pop up on social media, and you popped up a couple of times and said, who is this guy? And then Chris did mention you at one stage that you were quite good at putting a video where, you know, putting yourself out there. And I thought, well, that's good. So I went and had a look and stuff like that. And I think social media is great in some aspects, but in other aspects it can't be so great because it causes a lot of problems. But from a social media point of view, it gives you the chance to go and look at what other people are doing. But not only that, it gives you then contact with these other people. And if you're sort of the same nature, of the same mindset, you can go on with these people. But as I said previous, you know, in the podcast, was that if you think your way is the only way, then you're part of the problem. Yeah. It's really important that listen.
I was speaking to a gun dog trainer called Ronan Gorman, and I went over there to get two young dogs, and he said to me, the day you stop learning is the day you've packed it in.
Well, I normally refer to a term as the day you stop learning is the day you hang your lead up.
Yeah, that's leave it on the coat, hang your lead up, you know.
Leave it on the coat hook. Because one of the things I've said time and time again, look, if you want to join the training world, look at everybody. Look at what they bring to the table. You don't need to agree with them, you don't need to disagree with them, but what you do is you take a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that, and you put it together and you make it work as best you can. And you make it work for you, and you could become a really great person.
Correct. And I think you saying that, you know, that gives everybody, you know, even 15, 12, 13, 14, 16 year olds, you know, looking at this, take wee bits for everybody, make it your own, you know. MD in North Lanarkshire, MD in the training world, they should believe that they're the best. You should believe that you're the best in what you do, because I believe that I'm the best in what I can do, and I can bring dogs on.
No, you're not the best, but I am the best.
I can bring dogs on far better than yourself, but to do different things, because we're in different niches.
It's about...
That's not the reason I've collaborated with you and got in contact with you. The reason I have done is, you know, you're not scared to put your opinion out there. You're brave enough to put your own videos on, you know, that might not be absolutely perfect, but, you know, you put them on, you know what you need to work on, you're bringing folk together, you've got your business in mind, and you've got your future in front of you. So what is the future, Michael?
Well, the future is, for me, is to slowly sort of just enjoy my dogs and enjoy the relaxation. I think the dog training industry can be a very stressful environment as well. I need to point that out, okay, because the old saying goes that, you know, two dog trainers will never agree on the same thing. The only thing they'll ever agree on is if the third one's wrong, right? So that it can be quite a stressful area, because there's so many different people saying you're doing this wrong or you're doing that right. What you've got to understand is, if you believe in what you're doing is right, we'll keep believing it, right? So, like I said, I've had a couple of people shadow me, and they're now moving on. They're a lot younger than me, right? So I'm now at a stage now, 57, whereas I'm starting to enjoy my own dogs and starting to help other people buy home boarding. I'll be honest, I don't do a lot of behaviour rehab now. Right. I'm more focused on foundation work, putting foundations in place for people, because there's nothing more enjoyable than bringing a dog on, making it the way it should be from a young dog.
So I would say, you know, the most enjoyable thing for me about training a dog is the day I'm out in the penny drops, you know, you just bum, you're like,
Absolutely. But with a lot of the behaviour rehabilitation work is down to the very fact that foundations haven't been put in place.
Yeah.
Right? People are not putting the time, effort and patience in. They expect a dog to do something very quickly when it takes time, effort and patience. I saw a post.
Sometimes I say it's not here. This dog whistle is a whistle, it's not one.
Yeah. So, I saw a post today. Somebody's got a 4-month-old cocker and they're already saying, my dog's not doing this, my dog's not doing that, when can I do this? And I'm like, whoa, just slow down.
Yeah.
My little working cocker turns 3 in April. This was his first season in the field at 2.5 years old, right? And by giving him that time, giving him that patience, I've now got the dog that I can be proud of.
Good
right,
on.
because I put the time, effort and patience in. Patience is the big thing. Don't expect too much too soon, because...
And if you've not got patience to not...
Don't have a dog.
Don't.
Because they'll test you at times.
Because what happens with people without patience is they want their dog sent away. They've got a list as long as they're arm. They want it back in less than a week. We have written that. It just doesn't work like that, guys.
No.
But...
Thank you very much.
I want people to jump on to canine psychology. I want people to have a look at your boarding kennels. We'll not mention any prices for nothing, and I want people to get involved in this new thing that I'm learning about the man trailing. I think that's a great opportunity for everybody.
Absolutely, it's an opportunity to give your dog an outlet, right? And it's an opportunity for you to get together with other like-minded people in a social circle where there's no stress or pressures on you to perform better than that person. Everybody's in the same boat and everybody's there to help. Fantastic. And that's the great thing about it.
It's alright, I've not covered, Chris. Michael, of course you've mentioned.
No,
it's alright, I've not covered, alright.
I'd just like to point out as well that, like you say, you touched on the PTSD thing earlier on today.
Yeah, we didn't dive
too much in it.
I think Barty ran out.
You'll see me wearing this hooded top, and it's called Reorg, and that's a charity that was set up by a guy called Matt Omron, who's an ex-Royal Marine, who was a quadruple amputee from Afghanistan, and he now actually takes part in judo, believe it or not. So where there's a will, there's a way, right? And Mark set it up with various other people, famous people as well, and there's definitely a lot of organisations out there that can assist you.
So that's Reorg, R-E-O-R-G.
There we go, Reorg, and
how would people get in contact with that?
Just log on. Mark Omrod is, as I say, he's an ex-Royal Marine.
Say log on, and we find this on.
You get it on YouTube as well. Mark's on there as well. And like I said, he was a quadruple amputee. He's been on the media quite a lot as well, on TV. Somebody recently broke into his car and took his 2 limbs that were designed for him, and through the strength of social media he was able to get them back. But that was one of the organisations itself. There's various other charities out there like Bravehound that provide dogs for military veterans as well, as a help for PTSD. And there's the other organisations out there as well that can help you. So
what would you say to a guy that's just coming across this in the blue? It's
got
chronic PTSD.
Talk about it.
If he's able to go to a group like that, talk about it. Would you? I would 100% advise. If and when the time is right, get yourself a wee dog.
Right.
It doesn't matter what kind of dog.
Do you know what? Don't be afraid to talk about it.
You and the dog sitting on the couch talking. It's better than honestly. But I think we've told the story quite well. I think earlier on in the conversation you could really feel in the room anyway. You could feel the connection between you and your late grandfather. And it's nice to see a guy your age. Thinking back, 6 foot odd or whatever you are. Think back to your grand, 5 foot something, heart of a lion. And you could feel that in the room. Back to the old Glasgow days, we covered everything, and thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, and hopefully people will find it interesting enough.
Definitely. Take me a wee while to get this all put together. We'll get it done and uploaded in 6-7 days. Fantastic.
We'll catch you there.
Fantastic. Right. Thanks very much for coming through.
You bought it.
There we go. Thanks for logging on to the channel, guys. What we're going to do is we'll get in contact with Andy from Honourous Gun Dogs. I've been in contact with Alan Sankey from Brook Hunting Gun Dogs. Been in contact with Ben Randall, who does the Gun Dog Training app. You know, the list is endless. The problem with the new is travel, you know, and once we get going, you know, we'll get done, we'll see Chris Upton, you know, we'll see them all. So stay tuned, guys, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.